There's a version of you that only you have ever met. The one behind the smile you didn't mean, the enthusiasm you faked at a party you didn't want to be at, the "I'm fine" you said in a tone that meant the exact opposite. That version has existed for a very long time. Longer than you'd guess. And today we're going to find out exactly how long, and why lying might be the single most human thing you've ever done. Not the big lies, not the courtroom lies, the affair lies, the "I did not eat the last slice of pizza" lies, even though you very clearly did, and there's sauce on your shirt. I mean the small ones, the constant, quiet, almost invisible ones that thread through every single day of your life. The compliment you didn't mean, the excuse you gave for missing an event, the face you made when someone showed you their terrible haircut. Humans lie constantly. Estimates from psychological studies suggest the average person tells somewhere between 1 and 2 lies a day, and that number is almost certainly an undercount because most lies are so small and so automatic that we don't even register them as lies anymore. We just call it being polite, being diplomatic, getting along. So here's the question nobody really asks. Where did this come from? Is lying a bug in the human system? Some kind of moral failure we invented along with money and traffic and reality television? Or is it something much older, something that was there from the very beginning, quietly doing the heavy lifting of keeping our species alive? Let's find out. First, we have to go back further than humans, further than Homo sapiens, further, honestly, than anything you'd usually associate with the word human at all. Primatologists studying wild chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, have documented something that looks uncomfortably familiar. A chimp finds food. Instead of announcing it with the usual excited calls, he goes quiet. He waits. He eats it alone, away from the group, specifically avoiding the dominant males who would otherwise take it from him. That's not an accident. That's strategic concealment. Researchers have also documented chimps faking a lack of interest in a potential mate while a rival is watching, only to circle back later once the coast is clear. That's not confusion. That's a performance. A chimp deliberately presenting a false version of its own intentions to manipulate what another chimp believes. Chimpanzees and humans split from a common ancestor around 6 million years ago, which means the root behavior behind lying, deliberately manufacturing a false belief in someone else's mind for your own benefit, might not be a human invention at all. It might be something we inherited, something baked into the primate brain long before there were words to lie with. We didn't invent deception. We just got extraordinarily good at it. Now let's jump forward, roughly 300,000 years ago. Homo sapiens, brand new, fragile, living in small mobile groups, surrounded by predators that could end your life in about 4 seconds. And here's where it gets interesting, because archaeologists studying burial sites from this period have noticed something that seems completely unrelated to lying at first glance, but isn't. Ancient humans were burying their dead with care, specific body positioning, ochre pigment, shell beads, deliberate grave goods. That kind of ritual only makes sense if you're thinking about the person who died as a specific individual, someone with an inner life distinct from everyone else's, which means by 300,000 years ago, humans almost certainly had a developed concept of self, a me that was separate from the group. And here's why that matters for lying specifically. The moment you have a concept of self, you also get, almost automatically, a concept of an inner world that other people can't see. Your thoughts, your intentions, your actual feelings, as opposed to the ones you're showing on your face. That gap between what's happening inside your head and what other people can observe from the outside is the entire foundation lying is built on. You can't lie without that gap. You need a private self before you can ever present a false public one. In other words, the birth of the individual and the birth of the lie might be the exact same event, arriving in the human mind at the exact same time. But there's a piece of this that's even more interesting, and it has to do with language. Because once early humans developed complex, symbolic language, something happened that had never happened before in the history of life on Earth. For the first time, it became possible to describe something that wasn't physically present. To say, there's a lion near the river, even if you were nowhere near the river. To say, I saw a herd of antelope to the east, whether or not that was true. Language didn't just let humans communicate reality. It let them construct alternate versions of it. Versions that hadn't happened. Versions that would never happen. Versions designed specifically to shape what someone else believed and did next. This is a genuinely staggering cognitive leap, and most people never stop to think about it. Every other communication system in the animal kingdom is largely tethered to the present, physical, immediate reality. A warning call means danger right now. A mating display means interest right now. But human language broke that leash entirely. And the moment you can describe things that aren't true, you have, functionally, invented lying as a communication category. Fiction and deception are, in a very real sense, cousins. They were both born the moment language became abstract enough to describe things that weren't happening in front of you. So why would evolution favor a species capable of lying to each other? Wouldn't a group of habitual liars fall apart pretty quickly? This is actually one of the most debated questions in evolutionary psychology, and the answer researchers have converged on is genuinely fascinating. Most human lying isn't antisocial. It's prosocial. It's the glue, not the solvent. Think about what a white lie actually does. I love the gift. Thank you. You look great. That's a really interesting point. These are, technically, false statements. But they're not designed to harm anyone. They're designed to maintain social cohesion, protect feelings, and keep group relationships stable. In a small hunter-gatherer band of 20 to 50 people, the same 20 to 50 people every single day for your entire life, small social frictions could not be allowed to compound. You couldn't afford to alienate people you'd be sleeping 10 feet from for the next 30 years. Diplomatic lying, softening the truth, managing what other people believe about how you feel wasn't a moral failing. It was social infrastructure. It kept groups from tearing themselves apart over minor, forgivable frustrations. There's also a darker, more strategic layer, and archaeologists and anthropologists have found evidence for this too. Status, alliance building, resource control. If you could convince your group that a kill was smaller than it actually was, you could quietly keep the surplus. If you could convince a rival that you weren't interested in a particular mate, you could reduce competition. If you could convince the group that another individual had wronged you, you could damage that person's reputation and elevate your own. Lying, in this context, becomes a tool for navigating status hierarchies without violence. And that matters enormously because violence is expensive. It gets you hurt or killed. A well-placed lie is a way to compete for resources and status while keeping all your teeth and limbs intact. But here's where it gets genuinely interesting, and this is the part almost nobody talks about. The moment lying became useful, detecting lies became just as useful, and that kicked off an arms race that shaped the human brain in ways we're still living with today. If deception gives you an advantage, then the ability to spot deception gives you an even bigger one. A group where everyone could be fooled easily would be a group that got exploited constantly, its resources drained by whoever was best at lying. So natural selection didn't just favor good liars, it favored good lie detectors. People who could read micro-expressions, notice inconsistencies, sense when something felt off. This is very likely one of the evolutionary roots of human social intelligence generally, our obsessive, constant monitoring of other people's faces, tone, body language, and behavior for signs that something doesn't add up. This arms race, better lying versus better detection, never really stopped. It's still running in your brain right now, every single time you talk to another person. That flicker of unease you sometimes get talking to someone, before you can even articulate why, might be several 100,000 years of lie detection software quietly running in the background. Now here's a detail that developmental psychologists find genuinely remarkable, and it applies to every single human being who has ever existed, including you. Children start lying shockingly early. Around age 2 or 3, well before they can do complex math or read, children begin telling their first deliberate lies. And here's the twist. Researchers have found that early lying ability is actually correlated with cognitive development, not moral failure. To lie convincingly, a child has to understand that other people have beliefs that are separate from their own beliefs, a skill called theory of mind, and then deliberately manipulate that separate belief system. That is a genuinely sophisticated cognitive task. Kids who lie earlier and more skillfully often test higher on certain measures of social and cognitive development, not because lying is good, but because lying requires understanding minds other than your own. It's a byproduct of a brain that's learning to model other people, which is one of the most powerful tools the human species has ever developed. Every single one of us relearns the capacity for deception in early childhood, on a small scale, in a living room, thousands of generations after our ancestors first developed it on the savannah. It's not taught, exactly. It emerges, on schedule, like a tooth coming in. So let's zoom out, because there's a real conclusion buried in all of this, and it's not the one you'd expect walking into this video. We tend to think of lying as a moral defect, something dishonest people do that honest people don't. But the evidence points somewhere much stranger and much more human. Lying, in its earliest and most basic form, is inseparable from some of the most important developments in our species' entire history. The concept of an individual self, the invention of abstract language, the management of small, high-stakes social groups where everyone's survival depended on everyone else. The evolutionary arms race that sharpened human social intelligence into something far beyond what any other species possesses. Every one of those threads runs directly through deception. You didn't inherit a flaw. You inherited a survival tool, one your ancestors couldn't have made it through the Ice Age without. Which brings us back to you, right now. With your "I'm fine" that isn't true, and your polite laugh at a joke that wasn't funny, and the version of yourself you present at work that isn't quite the version that exists at 11 p.m. alone in your room. You're not broken. You're not uniquely dishonest in some modern, degraded way your ancestors would be ashamed of. You are doing something that predates civilization, predates writing, predates fire, possibly predates language itself. You are managing what other minds believe, the exact same tool your ancestors used to survive rivals, predators, and each other. Somewhere around a fire, 300,000 years ago, someone smiled at a person they didn't fully trust, said something they didn't fully mean, and kept the peace for one more night. And because of that one small, quiet, completely unrecorded lie, and a few 100,000 more just like it, the group survived long enough for you to exist